show kitchen is planned, I think the brief is the most important part that has to be shared with the consultants. And that brief is important for both interior designers as well as the facility planner. An interior designer, basically, as you said rightfully, Mr. Verma, his duty or her duty is to make sure that it blends in with the interior design concept and it doesn't look like a framed element in that space. So that's very important. But what is more important is that the emphasis on planning and zoning of a show kitchen along with the facility planner, because there is so much of repercussion on the back end facilities and the support system that the front end kitchen might need, which if in placed by the interior designer in isolation might not have a good impact on the final design functionality. So I think lot of coordination between interior designer and the facility planner, in my opinion, is important. The design and the look and feel part still is in control of the interior designer's responsibility, but the functionality of that function of that space still should lie with the facility planner in coordination with the interior designer. Because I have, and I might quote some examples here. I was doing a hotel in Gurgaon, and suddenly we went and we saw the planning of that kitchen, and what happened was on the drawings the kitchen consultant had said that the design and ID by interior designer, and the interior designer had said the kitchen equipment by facility planner, and the project manager was not intelligent enough to find this gap and coordinate. So I think somewhere down the line, for a show kitchen, in my opinion, the responsibility lies both on the interior designer as well as the facility planner for a good function.
Well, actually, you brought up two important things in that discourse. One is that when you talk of the equal responsibilities between the facility planner and interior designer, we are basically talking about projects which are by foreign project by the foreign interior designers and also foreign operators who can give and who do give a properly defined brief. And the foreign interior designers are also well versed in putting together the materials, the display, and the give it the unique appearances to make, as I said, to enhance the restaurant and the food appeal, the dining appeal. That's what we are there for. So again, what I'm saying is we know, and from the brief, what is the Chinese section requirement, what is the grill, or is the Japanese, and you name it. But the point is that we are not able to get the visuals from the Indian interior designers. We can just end up having a counter looking thing with granite or marble or wood, but nothing of interest. I've seen the finest and the best display kitchens designed by, of all the companies, Hyatt. Hyatt do a very good imagination in this. And there I must say the operator, the person who works out of their head office, who runs the food and beverage, sets the criteria of what he wants out of that display kitchen. How much of interactivity, what kind of cuisines, what kind of displays, etc. And then the interior designer also follows to give him that feeling, because he's looking to create a unique dining experience and enhance the character of the display of the food. So they design special equipment which is standalone. It may be a fryer, it may have been this barbecue grills, Korean barbecues, and so on and so forth. But made out of, some finished in tandoors made out of copper sometimes in what you call silver, beaten or polished or mirror finished or whatever. It's new. Some create bells over the tandoors to make it look like a bell, but it's actually a exhaust hood. Now that is not, a kitchen consultant who has designed that or has thought of that I should create a bell which will give me an exhaust. That's the interior designer's job. So what he wants to make that restaurant look is the characters of the ID. What we are concerned mostly when doing the display kitchens is, again, what Madhu said earlier, is how much of food we are going to cook outside in the display kitchen, what all we are going to cook in front of the guests, and what we are going to do in the back of the house. If relationship is not defined properly, then we can end up in over-investing in area and equipment in the back of the house, and also spending the equipment and the money, space in the front of the house. And when we are doing that kitchen equipment layouts, etc., in the front of the house, we have to know exactly what we are going to be using that equipment for. And in this connection, we have Mr. Daniel Metz from MKN, who can throw some light on the display equipment that, cooking equipment that is well versed in display kitchens.
Yeah. So we are, as a manufacturer, MKN from Germany, we are experienced in producing, manufacturing, and also designing cooking islands. Cooking islands by means of tailor-made equipment in order to meet the requirements of the ID and the kitchen consultant, of course. But I'm saying that is, we are talking about to fulfill all the requirements, ID side, also the side of a chef, because here we have to minimize the size, but to achieve the biggest output, which means we have a workflow in the kitchen that has to be guaranteed in order that the guests can enjoy this cooking island. Here, for example, on this cooking island, we have a U-shaped cooking island, and this is kind of interactive. The chef is working around this cooking island from inside, from outside, and to match the interior design, this is always challenging because that's always a coordination between the kitchen consultant, facility planner, and ID, and this is that's the biggest challenge actually. There are, of course, several things that can be done, that can be achieved: special shape of cooking islands, special facades, special materials that can be used, but all this needs to be organized. Most of the times, cladding for such cooking islands is being made locally. So it's by a local supplier, local provider, whether it's stone, wood, whatever it is. And there we have to make sure that everything is well looked after, that fixing devices are there on these cooking islands in order to achieve the final result that is asked for.
Now here we have a central cooking battery, which you can see is totally continuous and there are no joints. This has been done specially on order so that it can be easily cleaned and can be kept clean. This is one of the fundamental requirements in having a display kitchen. I mean, if you want to have a display kitchen, then please give it a lot of thought to the equipment and how well it can be maintained, repaired, and after use of 2, 3 years, 4 years, how well it will look. Because this equipment cannot be changed. The doors, if get twisted or get damaged, they cannot be repaired. So you have to have equipment that will last at least 5 to 7 years without any physical damage to it. Repairs and maintenance is also important, and as I said, cleanliness and the ability to keep it clean is also at its peak. You had raised this question of looking at the kitchens from above. That can be a very unsightly situation actually, and we all try to, including interior designers and everybody, keep away from it. Because no matter how clean we do it, keep it clean, but in a kitchen, things do fall, things do spill, and to keep it spick and span is difficult. So it's very unsightly thing to see it from above. Side, you still can hide a lot of things, but from the top view is difficult. So then we again look at the composition, and depending on again maybe we have equipment, that these equipments can be designed to suit the particular requirement of a kitchen. So it's not something that we go through a catalog and collect and put it in. This is another one. Induction plates, the cold food displays. Now, again, I mean, here there's very little that the kitchen, you got the drawers below, refrigeration, very little that the kitchen consultant has done, is put all this equipment. But you see the display, what it looks like, is the result of the operator also, because he's the one who's put in all the nice, attractive buffet dishes, and for the cold cuts and sauces and flavors. And then you have the equipment at the back. This is some more buffets, plus the hot plates, heated plates to keep the food in whatever smaller portions. This is another thing which is good for the display kitchens, is that long gone are the days when we used to keep big 12 by 20 pans full size and keep the chafing dish running for 2 hours, 3 hours, and the same food cooking and being heated for several hours. So this equipment now allows us to keep food in smaller pots, pans, and decorative utensils, not cooking utensils, and so that the guest can have fresh food, and as it gets consumed, more food can be prepared from the display kitchen and be brought to the front. So as you can see, there's very little that one kitchen consultant would have had to do with this, except for putting in the cold pan and the hot plates, etc. And it's a very attractive looking display kitchen and a buffet. There's some more of the display of the cold food and starters. This is in the bar. Now, this will give us an idea of, there's a lot of work and coordination actually that goes into putting a display kitchen. And it all starts from the operator and the brief that he puts out. And that brief gives us the theme of the restaurant. It gives us the character of the food, how it is to be served, what it will look like or should look like, how authentic it will be to the place from where the food originates, and what sort of equipment will be used to cook it. Then of course you start working on the designs and start interacting with the client and the interior designer to come up with the coordination between the ID and the kitchen equipment, kitchen contractor or the consultant, and then finalize the design, and then go ahead with again making the shop drawings and mock-ups if necessary, and the approvals. In this connection, I have to bring in Saharul, who is one of the better known equipment suppliers from Thailand, right? Allied Metals, who are very good in maintaining and manufacturing display kitchens. Again, from the point of view of keeping it clean, they are able to align the equipment. What is, you put equipment together, but it's up and down, in and out, things don't match, tables don't match, the fronts don't match. You've just wasted a lot of money, and it's ugly, it's useless, nobody will ever like it. So that's where you have to get a good contractor. He is one of them. There are many others. But I think, Saharul, you can tell us what your challenges are in putting together what I just mentioned.
Okay. As you can see in the design process for a display kitchen, it is a lengthy process starting from the F&B brief and the designing and the coordination. From the kitchen contracting point of view, we come in after the tender has been awarded, which means after that we should make sure that all design intents from the design, interior design point of view and from the consultants have to come to life. It should be beautiful, it should be functional, it should be hygienic, and it should be durable. For that, we need to do a lot of detailed coordination. Like for instance, in the previous picture, we have seen a induction plate where we need to also coordinate regarding the air circulation or the line so that it's straightened up. Yeah. In the
This one?
the next one, yeah. Okay. So you can see some induction plates, and that is sometimes which is forgotten during the design, either from the ID point of view, that it is related with the durability of the equipments. So we need to ensure that the air circulation is properly made. This takes a lot of time in doing this coordination, and besides that also the equipment selection itself is very important so that it comes to life what the intent of the interior consultant and the kitchen consultant has been.
I think this is a very good point that you brought up, Saharul, regarding the mechanical aspects of looking after or providing, to be provided in the display kitchens, because we means the ID basically, and we from consulting point of view, kitchen consulting point of view, don't give that information or overlook it sometimes, to give ventilation to the compressors. So the compressors fail often, and for the lack of fresh air. And this happens even if we know about it, but there's a lot of slip between the cup and the lip all the time, and it happens. Then the induction plates also require a lot of ventilation, because if you don't provide ventilation, then that's one of the reasons why they go out of order quite fast. And the noise of the refrigeration, that is another cause of concern today, and therefore we are providing more and more remote located compressors, so there is no noise in the bars or in the restaurants. So again, as he said, maintenance, to take care of the equipment later on. If you have to replace the equipment, you shouldn't have to dismantle the entire, interior structure, and you should be able to do it fast. And as I said, I mean, the cleanliness is a topmost priority. Yes, Satish. Can't hear.
In Goa, where we supplied few kitchen equipments, the installation was perfect. ID done the job of providing stones and everything. We kept the equipment also, and I got a desperate call that out of 9, 4 inductions are not working, and it was so serious that they want me to come down to tell why is this happening. When I reached there, I found that out of the 4 chefing dishes which is being used there, 4 are magnetic and 4 are non-magnetic. So in spite of everything is okay from ID side and from the contractor side, the utensils were wrong and then the performance was not there. And in the same job, some of the refrigeration equipment which were lying inside the stones area and display area, though the air was provided to go out, but there was no fresh air. So those are the small nitty-gritties. Some hole has to be made on the backside, few things has to be tested. So these are the challenges sometimes to a contracting company as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think as suppliers of equipment and contractors, it is the responsibility to bring it to the notice of the consultant or the operator at that time that what you're doing has certain drawbacks which will have problems, and therefore you should have this ventilation or that ventilation. Because if it's going to have problems, you will be called again. It's your fault. So, I mean, either you start early enough to explain to the consultant also or his staff that what are the things that he should keep in mind while putting in your equipment. While putting in, please provide ventilation, please provide cutoff switch, or please provide some air, whatever you need to be, so that these things are important and maintained. Because it's happened to me also on various other projects. No fault of the interiors or the kitchen consultant, but the operator just blocked the intake of the air. So naturally, it's not anybody's fault. There's no air circulation, it collapses. But they always the fault of the supplier. That's the unfortunate part. So it's better for you as leaving to make things clear to the operator. This is the one of the layouts of the kitchen where I think this column spoiled the whole thing. I think this is the column in gray. So when putting together an interior layout, I mean, one has to take this is a fundamental thing that you're creating such an expensive product, and visually it has to be so attractive, and you're putting a buffet all around it, and then this maybe 5 foot by 2 foot column bang in the middle and stops the movement also and the line of vision also. In some of the sections that are made while coordinating with the ID, again, as I said earlier, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but we put in the oven. But how the oven is to be treated all around is his job. Whether the oven below is in one way, the oven above is another way. Whether you have arches, it's a arabesque restaurant or an Indian restaurant, that's his creation. What kind of wall treatment it should have, that's his treatment. Madhu, can you give us some more insight into the interiors as to how we can improve this coordination?
As I said earlier, I think it is very important that the show kitchens belong to that space, and based on the design brief, the materials that are used to enhance, and also the divisions of various functions, whether it is the access to the crockery, whether it's the access to the countertop heights, whether as we said, ventilation is again functionality. Now, there are two parts to a show kitchen. One is functionality of the function and the other is beautification. The beautification part can be also very innovative. So for instance, you might just put in, say, to a bakery section or one extension of a show kitchen, an ice, in which could be a glass ice case, and that has to also have drainage connected. So all those things from a design perspective that we need to incorporate in our show kitchens will definitely need to be identified. And then I think we have to also understand as designers that we need to go back with that information to the facility planner so that they could incorporate that particular drain at that point. So in isolation, in my opinion, I think designing to the design intent is very important, and the show kitchen is like a sculptured piece of furniture in the midst of a lobby or a all-day dining or a specialty restaurant where it will be used by the guests for a good experience. But on the other hand, if it's not coordinated well, the whole design will just lose its identity if a guest has had a bad experience while experiencing that show kitchen. So I think both the aspects, you are right, innovation on the design as a sculptured piece and in terms of materials. For instance, these days you have a lot of agglomerated stone that have come into the market. Now, in some of the hotels, I think the designer has to be intelligent enough to understand what would go well on a top when he is integrating an induction plate on it, because if you do these agglomerated stone with the heat transfer over a period of time, you might have cracks. It might just look good initially, but later on. So I think the solid surfaces, understanding of materials, and to be able to play with materials to give a good look and feel is also the responsibility from a design point of view. Anything that you want to add?
Yeah, apart from that, so everything is right what you said. Apart from that, also from design point of view, the accessibility for service and maintenance has always to be given. And that's something that no one thinks about, and at the end of the day, it's the service companies who have the bad thing then, because they don't get access. It's difficult. And just remember, these display kitchens, they are always open to public, which means the time for servicing equipment and doing maintenance is very, very limited. Most of the times it's possible only during nighttime. Some of the coffee shops are open 24/7, so which means the service technician, he has to be in the kitchen only for a very short period of time. So this has to be considered.
Very true. Maintenance, upkeep is very important and should be the key to selection of the equipment.
Also, I think, which is now happening here in India, which probably 10 years back didn't happen, is that facilities planners have started giving sections while they are freezing the plans, which helps the interior designers to choose the right material and clad. I think that's something which is a good step forward, and I think with design improvement and increase in the 2D, 3D representation of equipment, then the identification and ensuring that the electrical point that is required to connect those equipments are at the right position. And I think this is again another one step forward to have good coordination.
Yeah, that's a very important point. The electrical connections, a lot of equipment requires electricals, but generally you will not see the electrical points. They're all recessed or hidden, but yet they have to be accessible. And you have to repair, you have to maintain, you have to get to that plug. You have to switch it on and off. But on the other hand, you don't want to show it because it's not a very nice sight. This slide shows that we have extensive amount of food and beverage within the restaurant. It's quite a large restaurant. But this is in addition to what is there in the back of the house. So what these display kitchens do is to also increase the manpower to a certain extent, because you still need manpower in the front, and that too manpower in good clean clothes, good demeanor, good English speakability and dialogue, etc. And then you have the the force at the back. So the two have to be there. You cannot bring from the back all the cooks to the front. So this is something else that we should keep in mind and discuss with the operators at early stage. This is some more central displays. Hood is another a very critical piece of equipment in the display kitchen, because in the display kitchen, as we touched upon it earlier, the smoke and the smell has to be trapped and cached within the kitchen itself and shouldn't go, in fact, to the lobby or to the corridors. And so the choosing of the correct ventilation system is very important. And it's also important to relate that with the interiors so that you get some synergy between the ceiling and the hood and its finishes, because there's a lot of things the interior designers can do with that. Lighting is another item that plays an important role in display kitchens, because you can't put halogen or tube lights that you do in a kitchen at the back in the hoods. So you have to have the incandescent lamps or heat lamps or whatever, LED lamps, which are conducive to the public areas in the restaurant. There are more sections for coordination. This is now we're going into 3D so that we can resolve a lot of problems with the ID in terms of coordination of services and finishes, etc. The island bar. Well, thank you very much. Go ahead. Yes, all yours.
It's a very well documented presentation in terms of the thoughts and.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not able to.
It's a very well documented presentation in terms of design ideas and the maintenance part. But there are certain aspects which I just like to capture, which are started from the very basic things. It's like while planning the kitchen battery. So it should not be planned in such a way that we see the back of the chef. So it should be perpendicular to the field of view, or it should be more in front. That is one.
Just one interest. This is just suggestive.
No,
For whatever reasons it was done, but generally what you're saying is right, and it is done that way.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my thoughts because what we have came across. I'm just sharing operator's
Quite right.
view. In terms of the display kitchen, the important part, as you said, is the lighting. So it's the lighting of the food. The food is something which should be displayed. So the display in the kitchen is the display of the food.
Quite right.
So while setting up the buffet counters and the live counters, the focus should be on the lighting should be on the food and how it is displayed.
Quite right.
That is like in the buffet counters, mostly the lighting part on the food is slightly missing. There's too much of ambient light, but the focus light is always missing. So lighting designing should be the part of the interior design and the kitchen planning part.
Quite right.
Then again, certain operators experience which I shared about the maintenance part, there should not be any gaps in the ceilings around the hoods, like the slatted metals is a very nice thing Hunter Douglas made. There's very nice concepts, but maintaining is a nightmare. Everything settles behind the ceiling, and it's the toughest part for maintenance, that you clean the muck behind the ceiling. So it keeps on dropping, and that's a nightmare. Second, the wheels in the kitchen battery so that you can clean the floor underneath it. That's something which we want. Second thing is a very minor thing, but it usually happens like when you have the hot shelving in the hot buffet counters. So all the inductions are lined up. You should have a UPS supply for that. In case there is a power failure, you have to manually go and reset each and every hot shelving, and it's again a very difficult job during the breakfast hours or in the dinner hours.
It is being done now. We're doing that, yeah. Again,
And last
We
part, they
needed
should,
this information from the suppliers,
yeah,
but it's
and
being done now.
the last part is there should not be any wood construction in the buffet counters.
Absolutely.
It all should be metal and
Or
stone.
marble and stone.
No wood, no MDF.
No. Wood should not be in the kitchen at all, any part of the kitchen, even if you have a desk
It's again has
in the, let's say, rubbish being thrown or napkins being thrown or nothing should be, other than writing desks in the chef's office, nothing should be in wood at all because it soaks up the,
true.
gets the steam into it, absorbs water, moisture, and then begins to rot and harbors a lot of bacteria and insects over a period of time. So that is a taboo in a kitchen. But your point regarding accessibility over the hood is a problem because nobody wants to give trap doors and access doors in these areas. And going from somewhere else and coming to that part is also difficult. So, although we are aware of the problem, we are conscious about it, but it can't be helped. I think you brought some other points in. Yeah, accessibility to below the equipment. Normally what is happening is that best is actually to put a footboard all around so that there is no gaps at all. So that instead of having legs, you'll get this from all suppliers to have this fascia below the equipment so that they can be removed for maintenance, but there'll be no muck or dirt going underneath to clean. Anything else? Anything you are left out? Okay. Any other questions? Please, let's have these questions now. Yes, go ahead.
While you've emphasized the importance of interiors and among things, equipments among, and then design of a kitchen, it's an actual experience that a customer faces when he goes to a display kitchen. But to me, personally, I feel that the people working in the kitchen would be more important than anything else. They are the ones providing the experience to a customer. Right. Everything is given, an interior, great concept, beautiful lighting, whatever. But the experience comes from the food actually, and the way it's made, the way people interact with the others. What is the importance of the people in the kitchen, working in the kitchen? To me, I feel it's a little more important than whatever else.
Madhu, can you answer that?
Nothing to go on interiors.
No, I'm
just saying.
see.
Sarul is a chef. He knows what it takes to kind of succeed in a display kitchen because you've been watched, perpetually, and people are watching. You can't afford to make even a single mistake.
No,
I believe they are equally or maybe more important.
I think the show kitchens originally were only brought into picture to have that interactive experience. So the person or whosoever is designated to be behind the counter is actually the most important person, and you are very right. But he has to be the right person. He has to have the right capability, training to the function that he is doing. You might see certain show kitchens where you might have not one, not two, you might have 3 people standing behind the buffet. So all 3 are probably doing 3 different pods, 3 specific functions. They have to know the dishes, they have to know what the guest is asking for, because certain things are also done on spot. Not everything on the show kitchen interactive buffet is something which is preset, pre-plated, and the person just picks up from the buffet. You need to probably also order. Some things need to be brought to your table while you are dining as well. So in my opinion, you're right, it's important, but I think then it goes back to the operations model, to your training, and for that person to literally own that space. He should be really very well versed with his space of activity, he or she, whosoever is behind the place. So they are important, but they need to know. That's why, so interaction with them, I think that's why even when a restaurant or a hotel, coffee shop or anything is launched, there is this simulation activity which takes place for at least 10 days before we even invite people, because that's the feedback time. And in that time is something that brand or the operator will put together to see whether what is missing. Is the person, has he understood the cuisine, or does he need some more information or some more education, or does he just need a smile on his face because he's not smiling enough? So I think it might, I'm totally with you that that also brings in a big feel. You might have the best of the buffet on the table, you might have the wonderful design, but if the person who's behind the buffet cannot offer you a good service or cannot actually encourage you to come back again, I think we are all in the same.
I think it's more of a management function.
Yes, yes. It becomes more of a management environment.
See, essentially when we are talking of this display interaction, I think we need to be very clear and demarcate three things. One is a display kitchen, where a customer can see what's being done. One is the interactive kitchen. Let's not confuse interactive kitchen with a display kitchen, because all display kitchens are not interactive kitchens. And the third aspect is a food display, like what we see in big coffee shops and all, where they have staff in chef's uniform standing behind. They necessarily need not be cooking anything.
Yeah.
They're just there to help people and just to create that effect. So basically all three different categories have their own nuances. And what the gentleman here is saying is, that is more of a management function. It depends how smart you are and how skilled staff you have. You basically have to put your best foot forward. You have to put artists behind, who can really work wonders and who know the basic process in SOP, and their skills are good. They are presentable, like Madhuji said. So it's more of a management function. I don't think any interior designer or a consultant can, if a consultant is involved, in the post-opening process, yes. Otherwise, this would not really,
If you remember, we saw a slide where 5 kitchens were there, 5, 6. As I mentioned, that you need that many number of people to man those counters. And all those people have to be knowledgeable to be able to answer questions about the food, be able to cook that food, be well dressed in personality, not have we look as if they've been cooking the whole day, and must be able to speak well and presentable with the guest. Yet you've got another set of people at the back who have to be equally good, but doesn't matter what they look like or how dirty their uniforms are. But still, the guy in the front is more of a chef de cuisine than the one at the back, because he has to be street smart. He has to answer all the questions of the guest. How it is made, what gives it that taste, blah, 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 whatever it may be. So, yes.
Sir, is there any thumb rule of size of display kitchen to number of covers?
No.
Because what I have seen, I just want to educate myself, in India especially, the majority of the coffee shops or the restaurants, they'll have a huge display kitchen. The area would be far more than the area for the guest seating. For a 60 cover restaurant, also you will have a huge kitchen, which probably is very underutilized.
Well, then he'll be suffering, don't.
No, but is there any design aspect
No,
to
it
it?
must be somebody, must have had some ideas why he's done that. But I don't think it's been, I can't think of a reason, but he must have done it for some reason.
Spectra at Leela is a living example. Leela Spectra is a living example.
Well,
You have less area for guests to sit than the area kind of utilized for the kitchen, and then they definitely have a pre-prep area at the back.
And Spectra came up maybe 4 to 5 years ago now. There's no other Spectra other than that. All buffets have been copied, all interactive kitchens have been copied, except for Spectra. One, exactly for the problems that you've just mentioned. And secondly is a huge investment in terms of the equipment, in terms of staff, in terms of the technology, and then the display of the food, which perhaps has to be, changed every lunch or dinner or breakfast. That's a huge one, but yet it is a successful restaurant where it is, but difficult to duplicate. Now, this gentleman behind you actually made a very good point about the 3 types of kitchens, display kitchens, interactive kitchens, And what is the third one you said?
Food display.
Food display, just
Display, a display of food, buffet. So, yeah, but I think generally we all look at interactive kitchens. Very few places where somebody has just cut a window or a glass to show what's happening. But then it's a disaster because you can't show the cleanliness of that kitchen generally. But you're right, there are three types of different.
standalone.
Creating a clear demarcation between hotels and standalones. Standalones cannot afford the luxury of space, so therefore interactive kitchens are a very difficult proposition in standalones. We run a lot of restaurants and we love to have it. I mean, we ultimately had to cut 10 covers out to incorporate an interactive kitchen, to make our display kitchen as an interactive kitchen.
No, you're right. Absolutely right. And actually the technology investment would be more for a restaurant to do.
We all have to own. Who owns that kitchen? It's all, and if it's a good kitchen and we are able to execute a good kitchen and we are coordinating well, I think it's good for each one of us. So I think somewhere down the road, the answerability will lie on each one of us and each of the key players, be it the kitchen planner, be it the ID, be it the project manager, be it the kitchen equipment supplier, be it the installer. So who will own this? It's very easy to say, okay, it's not my job, but that's the reason I said, I think the best coordination, even before ID comes in place, the coordination between ID and facility planner and the MEP consultants on a plan. I think even before you think about how you would clad and everything, if you've spent enough time on the plan and planned 20 times if required, I think half the battle will be won. Because on a plan, you can change, because once ID is done the mood, then it's very difficult to then ask the ID to shift a piece of equipment because it doesn't function, or your plumbing point you cannot bring to that position, you need to reroute and change your drainage point. So all that together, a presentation. Be it, the facility planner will come later. I think these are things we have to question, and it's an education. We have to understand. We've also understood the hard way. When I made the first hotel where I was an interior coordinator at that time, we blindly made the hotel. So we made desks in the room which were solid desks built in brick clad with marble. Can you imagine? I'm talking about 1983. And today, can we do it? If somebody designer will challenge there and then and say, because we are also educated. I think what is important, and in this forum, and it's a very good forum that we've set up, which is an educating forum, we have learned to share. If I have made a mistake, let me talk about my mistake. But nobody wants to talk about their mistake. Everybody wants to talk about their strengths. Strengths we all have. Why can't our strength become somebody else's strength and somebody else's strength become our strength? I think that's where we have to give and take. It's for each other. Do you think if I am telling you or talking today in this forum, I'm losing anything? No, I'm gaining. I'm making so many friends. Everybody will call me and say, okay, Madhu, what is your opinion? Or I'll call someone. So I think that's what, by the end of the day, if even I'm teaching at the OCLD, which is the Oberoi School of Learning, and that's what I tell the management students. I say, by the end of my session, even if you've grasped 50%, I'm happy. But it's important for me to tell you because these are mistakes that we've made in our life. So that's what I would just like to say. I'm sorry to being so up and about, but I think that's what it is. That's
Yeah,
what
it's perfect.
our faculty.
Really appreciate that detailed answer.
We spoke about it this morning also in MEP and plumbing and the hoods. I think the most important change that I've seen over the years, where a lot of problems, the reason why these problems are coming up, is actually lack of coordination meetings and lack of coordination. There used to be days when all disciplines used to sit together. Firstly, review the drawings in your own offices. You have to get to know the inside out of a drawing. And then you sit with everybody and coordinate it and check what does he require for his interior aspects, what does he require for his plumbing or electricals, and what do you want for ventilation. So these are the things that got sorted out there and then. If you kept quiet and didn't bring these things up, that's your fault. You had a forum to bring up these issues. You should have brought them up. So I think these coordination meetings should be encouraged throughout. I mean, whether it is with the services and firstly with the architect and services consultants, then with the contractors, and then at the time of the execution. Okay, what else do we have? Come on, guys, you're just waking up. Finished? Yes.
I think the interactive restaurants and show kitchens and restaurants, I think they've changed the game. I think it's such a pleasant experience to go there and have food, and I think all of us should be actually glad and actually be very happy and excited to do such challenging projects. Otherwise, what's the fun? But so just trying to say, it takes a lot of effort to do a display kitchen in a restaurant, but it is a lot of fun, rather than just doing behind the walls and, putting equipment together.
Right.
And I think I will end up with whatever Mr. Verma just said, that the coordination meetings are so important that in a 2-day, 3-day coordination meeting, you could do 3 months job and 2,000 emails job. You don't need to make 2,000 emails, and you do not need to, that's what, and we've done, we've experienced it on ground. So I think that's also, again, coordination is the key.
Coordination
I think coordination
is the key, actually.
Is the key, actually.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.